morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be here.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you. Appreciate how you create me. And I noticed this is just my story that the first one that came up was brilliant. And this is kind of the background story for the creation of this really what I call a paradigm, a new paradigm, or maybe a new context, was almost to fight my brilliance in the beginning because I have a new way of talking about it today after watching Mark Silverman's latest conversation with Michael Neal, where he talked about when you have a taste of something and once you lose the taste of it, it just naturally goes away. It's like I had a very strong taste in the first 40 years of my life for being right and having the answers and being brilliant and making sure everyone else knew I was brilliant. And if they didn't, reminding them of my brilliance. Journey, what I always talk about is like I spent the first 40 years getting my master's in righteousness, and then I committed my next 40 years to a master's in workability. This is, after 6 or 7 years of exploring workability, this is one of the places I've landed that I've started to notice really helps me. And that was all it was originally. It was just something for me. And then when I started sharing it with clients and other people, I thought, oh, maybe other people can benefit from this.
Ah, some days I think I'm still working on my PhD in that field. And then I got to put down the books. Yeah, that's really cool. So, where shall we begin? How shall we begin to unpack and explore and misunderstand misunderstanding?
Yeah, I think that's the place to start. Create maybe the invitation I want to extend to everybody on the call is a question, an invitation, a question, an inquiry of like, are you willing to be surprised by misunderstanding? Because I find a lot of, at least I'll speak for myself as a representative of our culture, I had a disempowering misunderstanding of misunderstanding. And so to me, it was like misunderstanding was the enemy. That was bad and wrong. That's often where I want to start with people, because otherwise I'm speaking into their listening of misunderstanding's bad and wrong and we should eliminate it. And this guy sounds like a heretic because he's saying not
Get the
just
pitchforks.
not just that. I like to be very provocative, very heretical. I'm not just saying misunderstanding is good, because I don't like to usually talk about good, bad, right, wrong. I'm saying something more radical. I'm saying understanding isn't even possible. It's not even on the table as a possibility. And again, I'm not saying that's the truth. This is my current misunderstanding of it, but I find a lot of freedom and notice the impact it has on my own nervous system when I let go of the goal. And to me, it was multiple points in my coaching journey that have helped, but one of them was hearing Werner Erhard say, understanding is the booby prize in life.
Mm.
And I got very upset at that, like pissed off at that. Because my whole life to that point had been like, understanding is the holy grail. And
Yeah.
now, and that was many years ago, I heard that, I laughed because when I look back, I would have said, yes, I understood what he said, that understanding was the booby prize. And then I didn't get the power of it because I understood it, or at least I thought I understood it. And now I've just been seeing that my misunderstanding has been growing and becoming much more powerful and workable than my first misunderstanding.
It's fascinating as you're speaking. I'm just kind of indexing in my mind all the places where understanding shows up in life as that which we should aspire to understand, to be understood. Misunderstanding is cause for apology. Oh, I'm so sorry. I must have misunderstood you. I don't apologize for things that are good, last time I checked.
Yeah. Well, and I noticed in my nervous system, so I appreciate you saying it, when you said being misunderstood, I'm like, ooh, that might actually be the bigger one for me, right? It's like I've all the time had this fear of being misunderstood. And so I wouldn't even share, like before, I wouldn't have even shared this talk. I wouldn't have wanted to do this masterclass because I would have been like, oh, they won't get it. They won't understand it.
They won't understand how I am sharing about misunderstanding.
right? But so all of a sudden
Yeah.
for me, this becomes way more fun and playful because
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, I know everybody on this call is going to misunderstand.
Nobody's going to get it.
Nobody's going to get it. Everyone's going to misunderstand. And why? So I want to slow down. Like why I find that so powerful is then the question shifts, right? My whole life, the question was, what's the answer? What's the truth?
Hmm.
What's real?
Yeah.
What's objective? When I take that off the table, a different question comes up for me. So now that again, this was the other thing that Werner said that really pissed me off because he would often say, this isn't the truth. And I was like, well, then shut the fuck up. Like, why are you going to talk to me if you're not telling me the truth? Right. So I had to notice my own reaction, my own
Yeah.
addiction to truth and be like, why would
Yeah.
someone, but then what he said after it was so powerful. And it reminded me instantly of like one of the first things I read about Buddhism. And I love Zen and all the things, but there was one thing that maybe the Buddha said, nobody knows because nobody wrote any of it down for hundreds of years, but possibly the Buddha said, I don't want you to believe me, right? I want you to treat everything I say like a goldsmith treats potential gold. I want you to break it, bend it, scratch it, melt it, make sure it's not fool's gold. And I just noticed my reaction to that was like, what? Who talks like that? Everyone else I had met in religion and everything else was like, I'm giving you the truth. This is the gospel. You must believe me. You must take this on, like all my teachers and parents and everything else, right? And here was one that was the first person I can remember who said, don't believe me. And then Werner said, I'm not saying this is the truth. And
Yeah.
then Byron Katie said, essentially, all thoughts are not true. And Nancy Klein said, everything's coming down to this assumption you're making. Like different people were saying it different ways.
Mhm.
And when I let go of, I needed to get the truth or understand, when I started to look back, even here, like early on, I loved Zen, right? And I loved don't know mind. And I don't know. And Zen masters would be so excited if someone said, I don't know. And I kind of got it, but I was like, how do you not know, right? If understanding and knowing and knowledge is still the goal. And so really this is just something for me. This is a long journey, right? And so I like to say I have a very slow burning wick, but Steve Chandler always likes to remind me of like TNT, whether it has a slow burning wick or a fast burning wick, right? Like once it blows up, it blows up.
The output is still the same.
Output is still the same. So I have a very slow burning wick on this, partially because I had such a strong taste for the truth and understanding and being right that I kind of had to, again, this was something I got from Werner, right? What he was very clear on, until you discover it for yourself, it's shit, right? And so it was
Yeah.
like this for me was like, oh, this was me. I had to discover this for myself, even though all these other people were saying something similar.
Yeah.
I had to discover it for myself. Or the one thing that Werner was so proud of like the one quote or saying on Richard Feynman's blackboard when Richard Feynman died, and I'm a huge Richard Feynman fan. He had written up there something he got from Werner, and it was something like, I don't know what something is until I can create it myself, right? And for Feynman, it was like, until I can go back and think from first principles and recreate this
Yeah.
theorem and all the rest of these, like I don't really understand it if I can't create it. And so to me, this is why I get excited about it. It's like this is part of my own journey of like, okay, this is me discovering it for myself, even though other people have been pointing it to it. And it's not the last, the most recent place this penny dropped for me was listening to a man named Steve DeShazer, who I love, and was one of the creators, inventors of solution focused brief therapy that became solution focused brief coaching when I came across it. And he started his talk standing up in front of all these, I think they were therapists, and saying, I am just so glad I don't believe it's possible to understand anybody. So first off, that was my reaction, like who starts like that? But second, I was just paying attention to my nervous system and noticing it relax. And then
Yeah.
he said, so since all we can do is misunderstand each other, I know that you can only misunderstand in more or less useful ways. And all of a sudden, that's what started to click for me. It's like, oh, that's a different question, right? Not is this the truth or is it right or do I understand? And to me, why I find this so powerful, because all of a sudden it resensitized me to something, right, that I'd become insensitive to. It resensitized me to the workability of something, right? And so how I say it now, this is my version of it, is since we're only ever misunderstanding each other, like you and I right now, everyone else misunderstanding, the question I have is, am I misunderstanding and in a workable and empowering way? Or am I misunderstanding in a unworkable, disempowering way? And all of a sudden, I love that because that in my Masters of Workability, it brings in a lot more sensitivity to like, is this working? And then two, is it empowering? And
Mm.
I like both criteria. And so part of this, since this is just my misunderstanding, none of this is the truth, you can make up your own criteria. I love those two criteria because the empowering or disempowering is something I can feel instantly.
Yeah.
And then the workability one, I got to test it. You can't know ahead of time whether something works or not. I mean, you can guess.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's also this reminder of like, don't take it based on how I used to listen to things of like, do I like it? Does it make sense? Does it match what I already understand and believe and
Mhm.
know? And that was the part that really kind of got me excited when Werner said one time of like, if you're listening only for things that match what you already know, how are you going to learn anything new?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
At best, you'll get something incremental, like, oh, that's a little bit more about, right? But if you, and so he would often say, like, anything, and I'll say this to my clients all the time, like, anything of value I have to offer you is going to make zero sense at first. And in fact, you're going to think I'm dead wrong. And then you'll notice I get excited.
Yeah. I want to take a little detour maybe. I don't know if it's a detour or not, but you talk about empowering and workability. I've heard you use workability in a lot of context. One specifically is your vision for the world, right? What I've heard you say, and correct me if I've got the words, if I've misunderstood you, but one of the games you're playing is a world that works for everyone. And fascinated to know what that even means.
Yeah, I don't know what it means. I just noticed how empowering and
Mm.
then workable it felt for me the first time I heard it. And I thought I got it from Werner, but actually it came from Buckminster Fuller, who I love, and who had said, like, we have all the resources we need. We have all the money, the food, the housing. Like, we have everything we need to have this world work for everyone today. We aren't missing anything. And maybe we've never been missing anything, but he had done the math and looked at all the trends and everything else and said, like, I can show you the proof. We are not missing anything. And so I just got excited about this possibility, right? That's what that is for me. That's a possibility of a world that works for everyone. And started to, and this is what sort of driven me in my coaching, but even more so outside of my coaching, is that the reason, again, not the truth, this is just how it occurs for me. The reason the world doesn't work for everyone today is because we are misunderstanding each other in disempowering and non workable ways. And so we can't clear up the misunderstanding. We can't get rid of the misunderstanding. But if we started to really came from this, that we have this freedom, right? Versus most of the time, like all the wars and everything else are created because both sides are very sure they're right. Like both sides are very sure they have understood and that the other person is bad and wrong or their religion or whatever it is. There's a lot of understanding on two sides of a war. I just get excited. And, you know, before I came to this misunderstanding, I got really excited that for me, how it was occurring was the path to creating a world that works for everyone lives in language. It's a languaging issue. And I
It,
still,
you know, it is, but there's an assumption on the ground floor of this whole thing that you're building on. That is that as it is today, the world doesn't work for everyone.
yeah, right. So that's part of my misunderstanding because like, to me, the world works. 13.8 billion years of workability. This universe
Mhm.
always
Yeah.
works. And if we zoom in at certain levels, you can find unworkability or what will
Well,
occur for some people for
that's
unworkability.
what I'm curious about. What do you see, right? Because I look at the world, and this is, I'll say, an inflammatory statement I'd make in certain contexts. I'm not saying this is the truth. I'm not taking a position, but if I'm working with somebody, my stand is your life works for you, and that's regardless of the conditions. That's regardless of the regardless of like, if it wasn't working for you, you'd be doing something different. So to me,
Yeah.
de facto, we all do what works, even if it looks painful or uncomfortable.
Yeah. So this is beautiful, right? Because now you and I can be like, hey, we have a misunderstanding. I have a very specific distinction for works. And so it's not the universal distinction. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily even widely shared. My distinction for works is tied to integrity. So without integrity, nothing works, is what I say. And so when
Hmm.
something or someone is out of integrity, it does not work. And I like to be very clear about that because often we fool ourselves by saying something does work or doesn't work. The classic example I use with people is like if you have a bicycle and the chain is rusted and one brake is missing and the tires are deflated, does it work if you can still ride it to the store? And almost everyone says yes. And I say it doesn't. It doesn't work. It performs, it functions. You can call it something else, but you're going to fool yourself by saying it works, at least in my world and my misunderstanding, and you'll miss that it's totally out of integrity. And if you restored the integrity, you would restore the workability. And instead of the bicycle, you sweating at the end of the ride because you're like, it's so hard to pedal this bike. And this is a metaphor for most people's life. You would have what I call workability. Now, that's made up too, right? Because whatever we define as integrity, right, it comes down to our word and about
Yeah.
the bicycle here. But
Yeah.
I like to have that very clear distinction of workability so that I don't fool myself or let other people fool themselves when they say something works. When using this distinction, this misunderstanding of it, I would say it would be more workable for you if you had a distinction here, right? And to me, mastery is a matter of distinctions. If you create a distinction instead of disempowering the word workability, you called it something else, like it's functional or it still performs or it still does what it does,
Mm.
but it doesn't meet my word, right? And that's the part that to me, when I say the world doesn't work for everyone, is there are people and systems and governments who say one thing and do another. And I say that doesn't work. Now, it's not good, bad, right, or wrong. And if I
Yep.
zoom
Yep.
out at the universe's level, if we blow ourselves up on this planet, because everyone thinks like sometimes people say Earth isn't going to survive. I'm like, Earth is going to survive.
It'll
We'll
be
be
fine.
damn
Earth will
fine,
be just fine.
right? We may kill ourselves, eliminate
Yeah.
ourselves. And even if you look, I've seen the David Attenborough went and toured Chernobyl and like the
Yeah. It's
plant life
wild.
that's coming back and it's crawling
Yeah.
all over the building, like Earth will be
Wow.
fine.
Yeah.
And so at the universe level, if we blow ourselves and go extinct, that works for the universe. The universe is fine because the universe hasn't given its word that humans should exist or anything like that. So if the universe did, had somehow given its word that we should exist and then we went extinct, then it would be out of integrity and we could say it's not working. But I don't think the universe has given its word. So
Didn't
this
get
is a
the memo.
very human thing for me.
Why not? Why not go right to integrity then? I mean, when you created that, all of a sudden I go, okay, a world where everyone is in integrity, that makes not only perfect sense, that to me seems to have utility, right? I get all in my head about somebody's bike is in disrepair. That is absolutely working for them. That's that's what they've created, right? It's by design, even if not conscious. But up to integrity, right? Like if somebody says, I want my bike to be in perfect condition so I can get the most efficient use out of it, well, it either is or it isn't. So why not just use integrity?
Yeah, I don't know for sure. This is how the story occurs for me is that you have a very empowering misunderstanding of integrity. Most people do not. And so the second I even use the word integrity, they disempower themselves and they have unworkability, right? Because they bring in morals and ethics and everything
Right.
else. Even the dictionary is very confused about integrity.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
It
to
requires
me,
a lot of
it's
words to reduce the misunderstanding of integrity.
and
Yeah.
so I found no matter which word I pick, there's misunderstanding. The workability has a
Ah,
little less. I have to still
okay.
talk about what I just did here.
It just clicked for me. Instead of talking about integrity, talking about workability fulfills on creating more workability and is more empowering for the purpose of us minimizing our or reducing our misunderstanding as much as possible.
So this is just my misunderstanding of misunderstanding. I wouldn't say reducing our misunderstanding because that's still
Okay.
a slippery slope,
Yep.
right? It's really like supercharging our misunderstanding, like creating a very empowering misunderstanding. And this is part of this is
That's a
new.
better dimension. That's a better dimension. Yeah.
So part of the, as I told Townsend this yesterday, I had a long conversation with AI yesterday on misunderstanding of misunderstanding. And part of what is so helpful for me is I was getting curious of like, what if I stopped calling it misunderstanding? Because misunderstanding sort of goes with understanding. And really, I want to get out of this paradigm completely.
Yeah.
And so I've come up with some things, and maybe we'll talk about them today. But what I've noticed is if I go too far into the new paradigm, there's no bridge for people to cross.
Yeah. There's just a deep, deep, deep moat.
Yeah. And so I can go
Yeah.
and I can be, and this is why I love working with Steve Chandler, because if there's no bridge, he will help me cross the bridge. He
Yeah.
won't say you're wrong. Like he's never told me I'm wrong or any of that, right? It's like he's so beautiful at like playing with words, but also slowing me down to be like, okay, you might need to build a bridge here, right? Because if you've left this
Mm.
paradigm and you only talk about the new paradigm, people in the old paradigm are going to think you're crazy, right? Because it will make no sense for them. And so this is
Yeah.
still part of my struggle with misunderstanding and misunderstanding of misunderstanding is really it's about a context shift and a paradigm shift, and it's not about misunderstanding or these words, but I got to
Yeah.
use words to coordinate a
Yep.
certain behavior. And this to me is one of the biggest shifts in my life is my misunderstanding that was a disempowering one of language, right? And I think most of the world has this misunderstanding of a disempowering one, which was that language is for communication. Right? I've asked tons of people, what's the purpose of language? Everyone
Yeah.
says some version of for communicating, transfer of information. And the misunderstanding that I find very empowering and workable for me that I got from Humberto is he said, again, not the truth, that as a possibility, language is for coordinating behavior.
Coordinating behavior.
Coordinating behavior. So it has nothing to do with the truth or
Yep.
understanding or knowing or knowledge. It's about coordinating behavior. And to me, that's opened up so much more room for me to play and have misunderstanding because I'm not attempting to get someone to understand me anymore, but there is some behavior I want to coordinate. And then it gets really simple because I'll often start there. Right? I'll often with clients, it's like, what's the behavior I want to coordinate? I won't play around with them. I won't try to trick them into something or whatever, right? If even here, this class, this master class, and at the beginning, like part of the behavior I want to coordinate with people, which was that question, if you're willing to be surprised, is I want to coordinate some openness to something, right? Because most of the time when we come from understanding, I'll just speak for myself. When I come from understanding, something that doesn't match my understanding, then I get defensive. I get closed. I get focused
Shut
on
down.
being right.
Yep.
I contract. I can feel the fear. And so this is one of the misunderstandings I often work with clients about is their misunderstanding of language that, at least for me, I had just taken as an assumption, like gospel truth, that my whole life I had known what language was for. And then I got really excited, like, wow, if I'd been this successful in life and I didn't even know what language was for, like imagine
Imagine what I could do now.
imagine what I could do now if I, still don't know what language is for, but I have a much more empowering and workable misunderstanding than I did before. So
Wild.
part of the reason why I love this format and we can open it up to other people is the only way for me to know if someone is misunderstanding me in an empowering and workable way is to have a conversation or ask questions or get feedback, right? Because in the past, when I thought it was about understanding, I could just talk forever and be like, if you didn't understand it, that's your fault.
Yeah.
Now that I know that understanding is not even possible, I get more sensitized and curious about how are people misunderstanding? Because I know they are, but are they misunderstanding in an empowering and workable way? Or how I would say it, where are they disempowering themselves? Where are they creating unworkability with this misunderstanding, but it's usually some other understanding, right? And this was the part that I got from the quote that I love, which was, it's not what we don't know that gets us in trouble. It's what we know for sure that just ain't so.
Yeah, that's a good
Right?
one.
When I look back at all my breakthroughs, and this is why I started getting excited to go in this direction, all of my breakthroughs, all of my coaching with like Steve and my previous coaches, every single one has come from something I was damn sure I was right about.
Absolutely convinced.
Convinced. Like you could give me a lie detector test and I would have passed it.
Yeah.
And then when I saw that previously I would have said when I saw I was wrong. And that's what made it so hard because I'm like, I cannot be wrong because I had a taste of adrenaline and, being right. And that's the thing. Every time you're right, you get a little hit of adrenaline and that's the taste people have. And that's the thing, like when you said before, when someone's life works, how I would probably say it is they're definitely committed to it and they created it and they're enjoying the taste of it currently, which is the taste of adrenaline probably, because there's probably a lot of
Yeah.
drama, very adrenaline filled, which is exhausting and everything else. And when you start to get a taste of creating another way, right, which I would say like coming from love versus fear, that's adrenaline is the fear creation. You'll get a taste for something else that will then you'll, what I got from Mark Silverman's conversation with Michael Neal is like, then it won't be work for you to shift, right? It's like if you stop enjoying the taste of pizza, was the example he used, you'd
Mm.
stop eating pizza. And it wouldn't take you 6 years, right? You're like, I don't like pizza anymore. It's like she hated olives her whole life. And then after her pregnancy, she loved olives. So
Yeah.
she eats olives all the time. And it's not hard. And it wasn't hard before to not eat them because she's like, I just don't like the taste.
Yeah. There's a wonderful TEDx talk. I can't remember the speaker's name. It's a woman, and she talks about what it feels like to be wrong. And her point is, it feels exactly the same as being right up until the point you realize you've just driven off a cliff. The feeling of being wrong is, I'm right. Her point was, when people say, oh, well, you feel bad. No, that's after you realized you were wrong. Not just being wrong, but when you are aware to your wrongness. And it was interesting how you said, I used to talk about that as wrong, and now it's misunderstanding.
So this is the thing which this is my misunderstanding of language is like when you change how you talk, the world changes, right? So even here, I would slow down and say, how you feel when you're right and wrong feels the same, like you said, until you find out you're wrong with how you said it. I would say until you find out it doesn't work.
Mhm.
That's what you're finding out. You're not finding out you're
Yeah,
wrong. But
yeah,
because we hold it as wrong, then we get defensive and we may not want to learn, right? But to me, when I
yeah,
shift the language and I slow my clients down, it's like the second you find out it's not working, and you
yeah,
probably, before you found out it wasn't working, you probably could have noticed it was disempowering. Like, yeah, but I thought it was right. So it's like, okay, so you had a clue, you had an early warning sign, it was disempowering. And then
yeah,
you found out it wasn't working. But because you kept it in the language of right, wrong, good, bad, that slowed you down, right? It's like if we shift out, and this is one of my missions, right, is like taking people out of the normative domain. Right? But so much of our language is the normative domain. Even we don't have to say good, bad, right or wrong. You can just say up, down, and everyone knows up is good. Right? You're
yep,
feeling up, you're feeling down, right? So we have
yep,
thousands of words that our brain, at least in our culture, has automatically mapped onto good, bad, right, wrong. That domain
yeah,
tricky. And to me, it's like playing with the misunderstanding, I get a lot more freedom. And then I help my clients, right? Because they'll come in and anytime they're stuck on anything, right? Listen to the word, they'll say it, but it's like stuck. But I would say it's like they've glued their foot to the floor. So they understand they're doing it to themselves. It's not the world doing it. Is there something, and I might ask it this way, it's like, what are you believing about the other person or whatever it is that's creating this because you're being right about it. Like you need to be right about the thing you're believing, right? And then you can always find it. It's like this thing. At first, they're not so open to it not being right. But when we started to play
yeah,
with this, and then I would start to say it like, what's the thing you're believing and misunderstanding that's not working? And you're like, oh, what's this? But before I thought I was right, and I thought it was them, and so part of this shift for me that's so powerful is another thing I'm gotten a taste of that I love is responsibility, being responsible. And I don't mean blame and obligation the way our culture uses it. I mean, to me, responsibility is something I want the most of in the world, right? Because it's like
mm,
love or freedom. These are things I just want the most of in the world. So anything that helps me shift from blaming the world or other people to claiming responsibility, I get excited
mm,
about. And this misunderstanding, since it's always my misunderstanding, shifts me. Right. When I think I understood, then I need to change the other person. I need to change the situation and I need to change the world. And I did a lot of that. That's what I call being a righteous asshole. That's when I was the righteous asshole. I'm like, I'm very certain and
yeah,
my wife needs to change. If this is my misunderstanding and it's not working and disempowering, well, then I can change my misunderstanding. And then life starts to work. And then I
yeah,
get empowered. Right. And so to me, there's lots of things that go into this shift, but it's my own journey with things I'd heard and seen from other people, and just this is my current misunderstanding that has got me to discovering it for myself and really being able to pull in all these what I would have thought before were separate, right? But this is ever since the writing The Power of Systems, I see how everything is connected and everything goes together. It's like, yeah, this is coming from my misunderstanding. And if it's my misunderstanding, right, this is, so I share with you, I have a very empowering misunderstanding of integrity. So for me, anytime anything in the world in my life is not working, I'm out of integrity.
Yeah.
Right? Again, not the truth and not
Yeah.
because I'm at
Yep.
fault, but I'm like, hold on, if I'm out of integrity, even if something in my client's life is not working, I slow down and be like, okay, I'm out of integrity.
Yeah.
Instantly, I'm claiming responsibility, but also I can always slow down and find it. And then I get excited because when I restore my integrity, shit just starts working. Like, that's just how integrity works. Like when you restore integrity, and I always start with myself, like when I restore my integrity, it starts working.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a powerful principle. Here, there's so much here to talk about, right? And at the risk of misunderstanding or creating more misunderstanding or creating disempowering misunderstanding, I seek utility in things, right? There's the theoretical application, and there's how is this useful? How can I use this? And I wonder if you can share about this in terms of either with your clients or creating clients. How is this exploration of misunderstanding, where do you derive the most utility from it?
So I love the question because I'm very similar. And this to me is why I get so excited about this, because all of a sudden it brings utility into it. Right? And you can change it to, so for me, it's that's kind of in when I say, is it working and is it empowering? But you could say, as Steve DeShazer, his initial one was, is it useful or is it not useful? And so all of a sudden, to me, practicality, pragmatics, utility is built into this because I'm no longer saying, because I've had lots of shit I understand and it wasn't useful. Right. So
Yeah.
now I would say there was lots of things I misunderstood and I didn't, and I misunderstood them in a disempowering and non-workable way, in a non-useful way. And
Yeah.
so in the past, I would stop there because I'm like, got it, check, understood. I could pass the test. I could regurgitate it. And I was desensitized to the utility, to the workability. So for me in coaching, I mean, I want to be clear. This is my current misunderstanding. This is a tool for you as the coach. This isn't I'm going to go use this on my client. And you can.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like anytime my coaching has not gone well, has not worked, has not been empowering, it's because in the past I would have said it this way, I was being a righteous asshole. It was because I thought I understood something and got stuck on it, right? Or was very sure about it, including like what the client needs to do or where they need to go, or even what they just said. Like, check, I heard it. I'm a good listener. I totally understood what you said. And so for me, it's just like the number one is like just giving me so much more flexibility and freedom as a coach to dance with whatever comes up for me, right? Knowing that I'm going to misunderstand it. If it's disempowering and not workable, I can slow down. I can ask more questions.
That I want to pause on that alone is a nugget of gold. I believe so many coaches show up, whether it's in the enrollment process or sitting across from their client with the idea, I must understand what's going on. And with that as the reference point, why? Well, so I can serve them. I can't serve them if I don't understand. So talk a little more about the shift that occurs, at least for you, when you go from understanding as a prerequisite to service and misunderstanding.
Yeah, so there's so many shifts that show up for me as a coach in that, right? And so one of the ones that really shows up for that is um, I now get really clear, not my job to understand,
Yeah.
not my job to make sure the client understands. And I would get stuck on there. And really what I would call that is like having an agenda in the coaching. And so my very first coach I had when I was learning, he would always ask me afterwards, like, were you tired after that coaching? I was like, fuck, man, I was tired after that. He's like, you had an agenda.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
clearly
great point. Yep.
trying to get something. So he always called it taking your coat off and putting it on the hook. He's like, take your coat off because you have an agenda. Be very clear you have one. Take it off, hang it on the hook. You can go pick it up when you're done. But in the coaching, there was a way to start to notice it of like, for a lot of coaches, I see it this way. They say the client was very resistant. I've
Yeah.
never met a resistant client in my life. Clients are not resistant. Clients want to get better. They want to do, they only occur for you, and this is your misunderstanding, as resistant because they don't want to do what you want them to do. Right? Or they're not open and you want them to be open, or they don't want to look over here, or they want to do something else, right? It's like that was a big shift for me. It was like, ooh, I had a total misunderstanding that was disempowering and unworkable about resistance. I thought that was something that lived over in the client. And then I woke up one day and realized, no, I create the resistance, all of it in the world. And if I don't even call it resistance and start to notice that was just my misunderstanding, and they had a misunderstanding, it may have been disempowering, like something started to open up for me, right? So I appreciate you slowing down on this. Like for me, most of this is all just about how it helps me as a coach. And as I've been starting to play with it and share it with groups, and then you invited me to do it here, right? It's like I've noticed for some people, it also works and is empowering. And I know for sure, and now I have a lot of relief that it's not my job, that lots of people, possibly people on this call, will be misunderstanding it in a disempowering and unworkable way. And where they'll get stuck is if they don't realize that's their creation.
Hmm.
Right? They'll be like, well, it's a stupid idea, or Trevor's not good at explaining it, or whatever, right? And there was just something to me so powerful, again, listening to Werner, and I love Werner in lots of ways, but he would say certain things, and he would say, lots of times, this is easy to get. And then occasionally he would be like, this is really hard to get. And so before I talk about it, you need to decide if you're going to be one of the few people who gets this or one of the
Yeah.
people, the majority who don't get it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you can decide that before you even hear what it is, right? Because
Yeah.
I get where he
Yeah.
was pointing, right? Of like, you're going to create it. It's in your listening, but I would say it's in your misunderstanding. But to me, even on giving a talk like this, I get a lot more freedom because I'm not going to get stuck on, oh my God, I hope everyone understood. But even here, not my job to for people to misunderstand in an empowering,
Yeah.
workable way. And the same with my client. And then it gives me a lot of freedom when I notice my client is stuck on something, right? Which is
Yeah.
pretty much always the case, right? They brought something, they're stuck, there's something else. And I might be able to, and this is where I would get stuck earlier, is like I can see for sure where they're stuck. I mean, now I'm like, I don't even know if that's where they're stuck.
Yeah.
But this gives me language, but more like a way of acting and interacting with them that creates much more of a dancing versus a fight,
Yeah.
right? More of playing, right? So why I like this is I like to say I like to challenge lovingly and playfully provoke. When my righteous asshole days, it'd just be challenge and provoking.
Your sake of challenge and provoking. Yeah, I know that one. Yeah.
Because I
You're
would
trying
get
to
in the
get me
adrenaline
somewhere?
hit,
No, I'm just trying to annoy you.
right? So now that's my shift of like, okay, can I do it playfully and lovingly? Because I know there's a lot of power in provoking and challenging. But even here, it started to shift my language because the challenge and the provoking live in the old paradigm,
Yeah. It
right?
sounds like a stand. I mean, it sounds like a misunderstanding is simply a possible stand, right? And when I say stand, I mean in the Werner sense, a place to look out at the world from. Most of us stand in the place called I must understand. That's the goal. That's what's important. That's what matters. That's what, right? That's where we're standing and looking at the world from that viewpoint, that vantage point. Misunderstanding is simply the opposite end of the spectrum. Yeah, you'll never understand. That as a choice for declaring what you're going to see. Most of the world is over here, and I need to understand. So just giving people the possibility of another viewpoint gives them the full picture. Now, if you ever met somebody who's like, yeah, I perfectly misunderstand that it's all about misunderstanding, you might take the opposite stand. Actually, well, what if you did understand? I drive people nuts because I always say you're exactly where you're supposed to be, or as a possibility. And I'm not trying to argue with them. I'm trying to give them the possibility of what if you saw that? And that's just the opposite of where they're looking from, which is something's wrong. That's it. Now, if I happen to meet somebody who was convinced that everything happened exactly, well, I would just take the opposite stand. Well, what if everything's actually broken and you're seeing it wrong? Like, because then you'll see everything that's possible, not just one way to look at it.
Yeah. And so to me, this is a slight tweak on, and it's a languaging shift, really. I mean, that's all I ever do is languaging games and
Mm.
languaging shifts. Is it's a languaging shift that I misunderstand powerfully and I create a lot of empowerment from, is because oftentimes people will talk about perspectives, right? Just take a different perspective. And the reason why I find perspectives, my misunderstanding of perspective is a little disempowering, is perspective sort of has this assumption baked in that there's actually something here. And if I stand
Huh.
here and look at it, and if I stand here and look at it, and my
Yeah.
misunderstanding, and if we really want to go deep into the rabbit hole here, my misunderstanding is currently not the truth, but very empowering for me, is that there is no objective, independent, universal reality. There is nothing there as a there.
I misunderstand that very much as you do.
And so for me, that's one that for sure people often misunderstand in a disempowering way because they find that very threatening. Like, you mean nothing's there? This is really, say it another way, this is a bit of a spin on Werner's empty and meaningless,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? Which I just find a lot of people trigger themselves with empty and
Ooh.
meaningless.
Yeah.
Misunderstanding gets a lot less of that response than empty and meaningless. But to me, it's the same thing. And it's like, this is my misunderstanding of empty and meaningless. And Werner might smack me if he heard me say it this way, right? But it's like, there's something that opens up that's freedom, right? And this is how I used to message it to my clients. Is I would early on, I would just ask them, truth or freedom, pick one,
Mm.
right? And then like, what do you mean I have to? And then people would be like, I want both. And
Yeah.
ultimately, every time I slowed someone down, they were always like, fuck, man, it's freedom. I don't want the
Yeah.
truth.
Yeah. If there's objective reality, there's no freedom. That's my simple understanding of it. If anything is inherently anything, then I got no freedom.
That's it. So this is where this comes from me of like even my love of science and studying science is like, oh my God, scientists and science have just been misunderstanding always, but we find more workable and more empowering, right? We used to misunderstand that the earth was the center of the universe and that allowed us to do certain things. And
It
we,
worked until it didn't work.
and even then it didn't work because the math didn't always work, right? But they're like, I
Yeah.
can't. So let's just fudge this. And then Copernicus and Galileo come along and they're like, here's not the truth. Here's our new misunderstanding. The sun is the center, at least, of our solar system. And all of a sudden, the math started working and other things. But people will then get stuck and they're like, oh, well, that must be the new understanding the truth, right? And so I'm very clear with people and I tell them all the time science never proves anything.
Hmm.
Science has never proven a thing. It disproves and it improves, but it never proves anything. And for a long time, our misunderstanding of was Newton was correct. And we lived in a Newtonian world. And then Einstein
That's
came
all
along,
there
right?
was. Yeah.
And there's like new misunderstanding and we'll get more misunderstandings. And so to me, it's like my misunderstanding anyways, like this is backed by science. This is all we're doing. And physicists still, all this money and years of looking, haven't found the fundamental building blocks of this universe. I say they never will, right? Because there's no stuff. It's just energy and action and flowing.
Yeah.
That's my misunderstanding, right? And it's like, okay, so this isn't, it helped me with my misunderstanding to become more powerful. It's like, okay, this isn't really heretical. This is actually what science and scientists are finding and discovering, at least in quantum world and everything else. It's just like I've noticed some of these things we have discovered, like when Galileo said the Earth is not the center, that took decades before people accepted it, right? And a lot of the things in quantum physics we have known for almost a century now, and still in the average everyday common sense, it hasn't started to show up yet.
Yeah. I'd love to open up the floor for questions. I could chat with Trevor for 8 hours today, and we can go all around a bunch of fun topics. But yeah, I'd love to. If you guys have questions, raise your hand. We'll have you come chat. I'm glad Liz had her hand up first. Let me get you to unmute. Gotta unmute there.
Hi, so many questions. It's absolutely fascinating. I think the first one is, are we talking about the same thing as separate realities here, or is it something completely different to that?
So I don't know if we're talking about the same thing. Um, But that's another way of languaging it, right? So I am what I would call a super realist, because sometimes you're like, you don't believe in, I'm like, no, I'm a super realist. I would just say there are infinite number of realities, right? And I go so far as to say, like, maybe we're each living in our own, or at least in our own reality tunnel. But yeah, that is another way of misunderstanding it.
Yeah, because I was only a few years ago. I was doing some training to be a deliverer of a child's sort of mental health program, and they talked about separate realities, and it was the first time I'd sort of really understood it. But which was, well, I think I understood it or misunderstood, whatever. I'm totally confused about that whole area now, which is a good thing. That that if looking at painting, I said I loved it, and you looked at a painting and said you loved it, I would have said, oh, okay, we both love it. But from that point onwards, I thought we both mean something totally different. We love it for different reasons, and that nobody would think like I think. Nobody thinks like you think. So it's impossible for us to actually understand somebody else. So what you're talking about today actually really lifts that pressure completely. We just assume that nobody understands and we misunderstand what everybody's saying. As a coach, I think it takes so much pressure off me because I'm never going to necessarily understand what the client is feeling or wanting or, you know, trying to do. And it just makes me more curious. It's going to make me ask more why questions and hope that something workable comes out of it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's been my misunderstanding, my experience, right? And I noticed you use the word confused, and how it occurs for me. My misunderstanding is you're not confused at all. You now notice you have a lot of questions and a lot of things you don't know, right? Often people misuse confused. And so I often will slow them down. It's like if I start eating the menu at a restaurant, that's confused, right? And so when people say they're right, I say they're very confused, right? Because they're like, I'm right. And it's like, that's confusion. When you know you don't know, that's not confusion.
Mm.
You're like, oh, I'm no longer confused, right? And I have questions and there are things I don't know and I'm misunderstanding. But to me, it's so powerful. And I'll give you a real life in this moment example. I just looked down and saw 17 participants, right? And so the brain in my nervous system was like, oh, fuck, like this is not a good master class. Didn't we start at over 30? Like everybody left because they're misunderstood. And I was like, then I started to laugh, right? Internally. I'm like, that's a disempowering, unworkable misunderstanding, right? And it's like, there's something to me that actually alleviates the confusion and gets us actually more close to the authenticity, which is the authentic answer is, I don't know. And or I'm not sure. And it's possible we're living in different realities, or even when we both agree with something, right? But that's a good example that you brought up of like everyone says they know, everyone says they understand that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And yet we'll get into arguments with someone because you're like, that's a beautiful picture. And someone's like, no, it's not. And you're like, what the fuck? What do you mean? Right. And then you say, well, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And you're like, oh, you're right. Like, I totally understood that. And it's like, well, understanding is maybe not the word.
Mm.
But if you can make this shift, and it is at first can feel like a very ungrounding shift, right? Where you're like, well, if there's no reality, if there's no truth, if there's no understanding, and I can never understand anyone, right? But to me, it was the same feeling I got, and now I have an empowering misunderstanding. The first time I heard Byron Katie said, "No two people have ever met," right? I was like, "Fuck you!" Like I'm married to my wife for 25 years. I've met my wife, right? And then I really realized, like she said, you've only ever met your story, and what I would say is you've only ever met your misunderstanding of the other person, and that's
Yeah.
totally fine because you can coordinate behavior and have a wonderful life. I'd say more fun, more dancing, coming from that misunderstanding.
I think that what's really helped me in the conversation was you adding if it's workable, if that the next step, if the misunderstanding means it's workable. I used to be really interested, wanting to know how, let's say, a television works. How does it work? You switch it on. How does it work? How does each bit? And I think I'm never going to get that. It works. And you switch it on and the picture comes on and, forget about worrying about how it works. It just works. So that was another piece of the puzzle for me. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Yes. Hey, Dakota.
Hello. Two questions. First one was, what is your definition of misunderstanding?
So, since I'm totally fine with everyone misunderstanding, I'm going to go full geek and word nerd and like playful out with you.
Amazing.
I have a very unworkable, disempowering misunderstanding of definition. So I don't like definitions.
Mm.
I love distinctions. And at first, this drove me crazy because Werner would distinguish things and he would never define it. And then I opened up, like, defining is so I can understand. So I can get it very clear and very eliminated in a nice, neat package and be like, here, this is the truth of misunderstanding.
Mm.
And so I won't do that for you because that would be cruel. It's like, okay, well, maybe misunderstanding is the most misunderstood thing in the world. You don't need to have a definition or even much of a distinction, although I'm guessing you'll start to get a distinction. You create it for yourself of like, well, misunderstanding, whatever your current one is, and maybe that's the place to start, is like, what's your current misunderstanding? And then have you check in. Is it currently empowering you and workable? Or is your question coming from there's something you're sensing that's disempowering or not workable, but your current distinction, my word, maybe your word, definition for misunderstanding?
Okay. What I wrote down earlier in practical, this is how to use it. So I don't think this is the definition or the distinction, but this is my attempt to understand what you were trying to say. So this is the whole thing. But I said, so if something isn't working, then what you currently know, if you unlearn what you currently know or misunderstood, then you can find workability.
So I just got chills because I now have a new misunderstanding thanks to you. Because I was like, did I say that? And maybe I did, but I didn't misunderstand it the way you just did, right? And I hadn't connected it with what you just said about unlearning. So you might want to play with that and go test it out, but it occurred for me as a very empowering misunderstanding, right? Where you're like, hey, if there's something that's not working, I love how you tied the not working. Normally I go to the integrity route. If something's not working, I'm out of integrity. If something's not working, there's something I need to unlearn. And to me, I love when you saw it, and all of a sudden, I had a more powerful misunderstanding of your question when you said, oh, this is about applying it. It's not really, I need a definition. And what I got from you just now is I don't really need to understand it. But when I go to apply it, it's like, ooh, that's already the shift. And so this is, again, why I love this. It's like all of a sudden, I just got a more empowering misunderstanding because you shared your misunderstanding.
Word. Sounds good. Thank you.
And
Hey guys. Yeah, Trevor, I love meeting myself in this place of misunderstanding. And I don't know how I'm curious about I hear words workability, I hear utility from Townsend. And then I think in the context of coaching, I think, well, who cares? Like, and I mean this in a very like, how can you say that, in my misunderstanding might be, how can you say you create anything for people? Like, I mean, how can that actually occur if there are no other people? And if that can't occur, what actually is workability? As I think deeply on the concept of workability, I think, it sounds like workability for me is either death or never having to talk to a person again. And I'm just meeting myself in this place right now. And I'm like, anytime you're bashed against a person, there's unworkability. That's why you're with the person. Like they come to you we're either meeting or they come to you as a coach and you're just reflecting themselves back at them. That's inherently unworkable, right? I don't know what I'm asking.
I don't know either. My invitation to you would be to slow down and just check in. Like, is it occurring for you in this moment? what you might call your understanding, what I would call your current misunderstanding, is that empowering you? Right? Is it exciting you? Or is it like, and I can feel myself contracting? And then you
I
can say, is it working? But you might have to test it to see whether it's working. But this is just my story.
well,
My
what is
story is you have
working? But what is working? Like, what is working? Like, if I'm in a naturally contracted place, which I am in the world today, so nothing is working, right?
Okay.
But nothing's actually happening. The world is just occurring. So, like, that's why I'm asking, what is workability? If I'm contracted, the world is just going. There is no world. There are no people. There is no thing. So there's nothing that actually inherently exists, just me. So what is workability? The only thing I can actually see is that I can only see through the lens of nervous system, either regulation or dysregulation. So in that respect, workability can't be created. It doesn't even exist in my perception. So I need to know the definition of workability. You don't like definitions, but like what's your misunderstanding of workability in comparison to my misunderstanding that workability doesn't inherently exist?
Yeah. So here's my misunderstanding, since that's what you asked for. It's all made up, right? So I got to make up something. So this is a game I made up that I call working and workability. And you don't have to make the game up this way. You can misunderstand it in a different way. I would just invite you to, however you're misunderstanding it, create it as an empowering, workable way. My misunderstanding, the way I've made up the game, is that if I say I'm going to pick up my son at 5 o'clock on Friday, and I pick up my son at 5 o'clock on Friday, that worked. If I say I'm going to pick up my son at 5 o'clock on Friday, and I do not pick up my son at 5 o'clock on Friday, that did not work. Now, if I couldn't do it because my car broke down, like, I don't care. Like, it worked or it didn't work. And it's not good if I do it, and it's not bad if I don't, right? It works if I do it, and it doesn't work and if I don't. And again, that's just a pure made up game. But I find that game very empowering and workable. It's kind of built into my definition of workability, which is just like a small facet of integrity, right? So for me, when something is in integrity, it works. And so this universe, always in integrity, the universe is always working. But if I zoom into something based on the way I've defined the game, distinguished the game, created the game, this is not the truth. When my computer system, right? So sometimes this microphone stops what other people would call, then they'll say it stopped working when the sound doesn't transmit. Right? And so I've noticed it's because something is out of integrity with my Bluetooth, and I have to unplug it from the back of my computer and plug it back in. Right? And so the fact that I sometimes have to do that on the call, some people would say, well, that's working. And I would say, no, that doesn't work. That's not workability. The fact that sometimes in the middle of the call, I have to reach around and unplug it and plug it back in doesn't work for me. And to me, the microphone and the computer is out of integrity because it didn't give me its word that occasionally, randomly, it would just stop. Right? So it's like, that to me is just a game I have created that allows me to create workability, but also trust and performance and so many other things. This is a much bigger topic to go into. But again, that's just my misunderstanding. It's not the truth. And so you can misunderstand workability. And if you're like, workability is a stupid word, you never have to use it again in your life.
Fascinating. It has given me a lot to think about, and I'll
Yeah. Thanks, Andy. Are there any truths?
This, again, not the truth. This is my misunderstanding. There are no capital T truths. That would require, in my current misunderstanding, an objective, universal, independent reality. And to me, the key word there is universal. And I'm not saying there's nothing here. I'm not saying there's no reality. This is all a dream. I'm not saying any of that stuff.
Right.
To me, at least in my experience, I have yet to find a single thing that is universal. Whether it's universally agreed on or universal, right? But some people think it is, and then they use the universal. And this is my history, my journey, and for other people, maybe they don't even need any of this. So that's why this is not a prescription.
Yeah.
What I've really realized, and the big game changer for me, was calling it being right didn't work anything for me, because it's like, well, who doesn't want to be right? And what's wrong with being right?
Yeah.
The big shift came for me when Humberto Maturana said, anytime you appeal to objectivity, the truth, reality, call it whatever you want, really what you're doing is demanding obedience.
Mm.
The only time you appeal to and say to someone, come on, be real, be objective, this is the truth, is because you're demanding that they obey. And that's the one that that was like the soul crushing moment for me, because I was like, fuck yeah, that's what I do. I don't even call it righteous asshole anymore. I just call it demanding obedience. When I demand obedience from my clients, my kids, my wife, even here, I could have in the past, I probably would have demanded obedience from Andy and be like, no, you need to see workability in a certain way and you need to use workability, because if you don't, like, I'll feel threatened and my ego would be like, oh, what if I got it wrong about workability? So I need to convert the whole world to workability.
And
And
the beautiful thing here is, and people are putting stuff in the comments. Well, isn't love truth universal? Isn't gravity? Well, yeah, sure. From your understanding, it is. Or sorry, from your misunderstanding, it is. That's their misunderstanding. And if that misunderstanding is workable and empowering,
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
We,
And
we
so
don't
that's
we
the
don't
thing. It's
we
like,
don't need to agree.
right? We don't need to agree. Doesn't need, and that's why I love coordinating behavior. It's not agreed
Yep.
behavior. It's
Yep.
not
Yeah.
forced behavior, because coordination only happens when both people, when it's consensual and all the rest of it. That's my
Yeah.
misunderstanding anyway.
Yeah.
Is I do love to, I mean, I'm currently writing a book on love with Steve. And, it's easy to sometimes slip in to be like, well, love is universal, or it's all love, or something else. And I'm wary of that, right? And this is something I got from Nancy Klein, where she said certainty is a drug and an impossibility.
Man, that's just your misunderstanding of it, man.
Right?
Right?
But I had a very powerful misunderstanding in that moment
Sure.
of like,
Yeah.
well, why do I need certainty? Either to make me feel better or to demand obedience for someone else. And again, this isn't the truth. This is just how it occurred and how it showed up in my life. And finally, I got sick of demanding obedience from clients, from friends, from my wife. That was the main one, from my wife. In a relationship with two people, for me to be right, she had to be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it just never shifted when I thought it was about right and wrong. It's like, okay, I'll just stop trying to be right so much. And then when I was like, oh my God, what's really going on is I'm demanding obedience
Mm-hmm.
from the other person. That blew it wide open for me.
Yeah. What works about this whole idea for me is I am optimizing everywhere for peace. Peace is what I index everything against. And to me, this is inherently peaceful. Just it is what it is. Your misunderstanding is your misunderstanding. Mine is mine. And yeah, nothing need to be done about that. It's perfect.
And you can have a happy life and you can get a great relationship and you can fly a plane from one place to another on misunderstanding, right? And this is the thing, like a plane, 97% of the time it is off target, right? And the plane is constantly correcting or on autopilot, and if not, the pilot's correcting, right? It's like, really, to me, that's like 97% in the old model misunderstanding the whole way. It's like, to me, it's all misunderstanding. And you can fly a plane, you can put a man on the moon, all from misunderstanding. So then we don't have to get stuck on understanding. I don't need to demand obedience. I don't need to have the whole world agree with me. And instead, I become much more sensitive to how I would say it. Is it working? Is it empowering? And that's why I love to say my definition of works is working for the universe, not working for me, right? Because it's like I used to say that in my marriage. This works for me. And then I found out really quickly, if it doesn't work for my wife, it doesn't work for me. And that's what I've noticed in the world. It's like, if it doesn't work for everyone involved, or why I say a world that works for everyone, is like, yes, I could definitely create a solution that works for the 1% or works for this country, or right. But it's like, that wasn't a fun, interesting game. Could you create it in a way that works for everyone? And what would, and I still have, I mean, I have no idea how or what that would look like necessarily, but I notice I get very empowered, very excited. It gives me a big game to play, so that when a client says no, I'm not all upset about one client saying no, right? Because I'm like, oh, I needed the money. It's like, listen, I'm playing a way bigger game than this one client, or even my coaching career, right? If all of a sudden someone came to me like, you can't be a coach anymore. Okay. Right? Like, ultimately, the game I'm playing is bigger than this little game.
It says iPhone at me, but I'm guessing that's not your name.
Is that me? Well, this is Marion.
Hi, Marion.
Hello.
Hello. Well, I just want to say, referring to you mentioning this word resistant, that I find myself having resistance toward the word misunderstanding. And I'm saying it because when I hear you say misunderstanding, then it sounds like, okay, this is pitting misunderstanding against understanding. And that sounds like right and wrong, or wrong and right. And when you mentioned Byron Katie saying, well, this is just a story, this is just my story, that works for me. I don't have resistance toward a story, having my story of something and the other person having their story of something, because that's like, that opens up a space to me. But misunderstanding and understanding doesn't open up a space. It sounds like two standpoints. So that's not helpful to me. It's not working for me. And
Yeah.
my question is, referring back to something you said in the beginning, you said integrity. When something in my life or even my client's life is not working, then I am out of integrity. So how do those two, how do you synthesize those two? I can't do it.
So I so appreciate, one, your authenticity and the way you're speaking, right? Where you're like, it's not that there is resistance, right? But you're like, hey, hold on. And something will start to open, I say, when you start to speak this way. Like, I am creating resistance to the word misunderstanding. The word misunderstanding is just a noise. And so what I say, this is my misunderstanding that I got from a book called Science and Sanity, which sounds very specific, right? But when you're dealing with words, you need to realize, and everything in life, you need to realize you're having a semantic reaction. Your semantic means the meaning. So what's really going on is you're reacting to the meaning that you assign to the word, in this case, misunderstanding. And you gave it to me. You're like, I misunderstanding is bad and understanding is good. Yes, everybody does that with some, and I haven't yet found, and if you find one, I think this is a kind of how words work, right? It's like they all come as dualities or polarities, right? And so story, for some people, and if it's powerful for you, I would encourage you, use story, throw away misunderstanding, is I've noticed people will still create the same. They're like, well, there's clearly nonfiction stories and fiction stories, right? Like that's why we have nonfiction and fiction. So this is, and they'll say all the time, okay, but what's the true story, right? So for some people, story gets that reaction. When I tell them like, well, that's just your story, you watch them react. They're like, you just devaluated my whole life. You just said my relationship with my wife is a story, because they have a very disempowering and unworkable misunderstanding of story, but to me of language, right? This is a fascinating one for me. I get excited about this. I have a very empowering, workable one of language, right? It's like language. My Substack is called Playing with Words, right? Because until you start to play with words, words will play with you, right? And you'll be at the effect of them, of your semantic reaction. Like one I do with people all the time is like shit, and you watch them, right? Or penis, and you're like, it's like as if a penis just appeared, right? And I'm like, it's a noise, right? Like you want to take this extreme, and now I'm going out of integrity. So I'm going out of integrity on purpose, and I'm going to go clean this up with my family later tonight because they said to never tell this story to anybody. You want to see what the power of semantic reactions. I can just notice my nervous system. Like I'm already contracting, even just sharing this story. You want to play with the power of semantic reactions and language and the power of all that. The next time you take a shit, before you flush, reach your hand in the toilet and grab your shit. Right? And just watch, like even right now, I can feel it. It's like, oh my God, I can't do it, right? And the first time I'm like, oh, this will be disgusting. And then you do it and you're like, it feels like body temperature and it's something else. But we have this such strong semantic reaction of like, well, that's bad. I mean, and then afterwards I washed my hands like 40 times. Like I thought I was going to die afterwards, right? But it was just so, and when I told my family, they were like, that's messed up. Please never tell that story to anyone. And so I committed to never telling the story. So now I'm out of integrity and I'll go clean that up with them. But it's like, it's the same thing with like people who burn the flag, right? They are very confused. The flag is not the country. And so I say that they're having a semantic reaction, but the people who get upset at people who burn the flag have the same misunderstanding. A flag is not a country, it's just a piece of thing. And if you burn it, you burned a piece of thing. So it's the same with all words, but I love that you noticed it, right? You felt it. You're like, hold on. And I encourage you to, instead of saying you have resistance to it, it's like, okay, you can say it however you want. I say misunderstanding or disempowerment, or that word doesn't work. You just say
Yeah,
use the
that
word.
doesn't work for me.
So I use story. And my invitation is that notice, and I love that you've had it, because now I say you'll have so much more compassion when a client or someone else has a disempowering misunderstanding, or what I would say, you might say, a disempowering story about story. They're like, that's not a fucking story. Like you called it a story, right? And if you're really stuck on story is the truth, and I need to get them to say story, you might get really stuck, versus you can start to dance. And at first I couldn't dance with this. The first time I came across this, I'm like, misunderstanding is the truth. So then I had to like beat my clients into submission and demand obedience that they would say misunderstanding, right? And now I have a lot more flexibility and freedom that it's not the word, right? It's what behavior does the word coordinate? And so what you notice is the word misunderstanding was coordinating a certain behavior with you. And you're like, okay, great. I won't use that word then. Because it's not about the word. Ultimately, it's about the behavior and the other things you're coordinating. And if you've got an ability, and for you, if it's really landed for you, of like story is very powerful, then I say that will be powerful when you play with people, as long as you don't ever glue your foot to the floor about story is the truth, right? Because for some people, and now I say, you'll be able to play with it, because you'll be like, oh yeah, let me tell you about the semantic reaction, or use your words. The resistance I felt when someone first shared with me misunderstanding, right? Because even the miscommunication, it's like misfit, like, oh my God, everything is, I just realized we call women miss, right? It's like different spelling, right? But maybe there's something there. It's like there's so much tied up with language until you start to see that that's all, to me, misunderstanding, and you can play with words. The words will play with you. And I appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
Such good stuff. Hey, Sam, you have to unmute yourself.
Good morning. So let me try this on. So for me, when I understand something, I've like cut off all possibility of it being some other way. Right? So I love the misunderstanding. It opens up possibility again. Right? Like I misunderstand something and then I can go, oh, then there's a possibility of some other way of it being, right? Brilliant.
So I appreciate you sharing that. So really you're uncovering my love for possibility, right? That's where this even came from. It was like, how can I have more possibility of something I want the most of in the world, like love and responsibility? This was me playing with that, of like, how can I have more possibility? Because I was exactly the same. As soon as I got sure or certain or correct or right, it became a position that I needed to defend. And I cut off. I heard this saying, Maria Popova, in the most recent Marginalian newsletter she sent out. She said this beautiful phrase. She said, don't mistake the limits of permissibility with the horizon of possibility.
Mm.
And I was like, well, I love that metaphor, because the horizon, no matter how much you walk towards it, it keeps moving away. And it's like, so possibilities like that, you can never extinguish or get rid of or use up all the possibilities, like that horizon. And so to me, it's so powerful. And so I am so in love with possibility. I appreciate you sharing. It's like, that's the behavior it coordinates with me. It's like, I don't ever lose the possibility, including the possibility that I completely misunderstood in a disempowering, or that I was totally wrong, or how Anthony DeMello says it, of like, I'm an ass, you're an ass, right? We're both asses, right? And so then if someone says, you got that wrong, I'm like, yes, because I'm an ass. What did you expect? Right? It's like, I don't need to defend anything.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And this is just my misunderstanding, my story, that you felt that, right? And to me, that's the empowering, disempowering part. We all have this exquisite nervous system that we don't pay attention to most of the time, right? And so for me, having those two criteria, and I invite you to invent your own. I like one that I get a sense viscerally of in real time. And then the other one, the workability, and to Andy, this is for you, it's like, you only know if you go test it, whether it worked or not, right? So I love to not have to wait. It's like, okay, I get something. I want to move in the direction of the empowering, because it's powerful and possibility. And that's why I love possibility. I can sense it. With my clients, it's often my hair, goosebumps, it stands up, and I show it. I'm like, ooh, I just got goosebumps. Possibilities here. I love this misunderstanding because it's not all about the head, right? It's not all about, well, 2 + 2 is 4, right? Like that's actually our misunderstanding. If you change the base of the numbers, 2 + 2 isn't 4 anymore, right? It's like, I love that it brings in this embodied sense into it. So we have this other intelligence besides our, what we would usually call our understanding.
Man, I think we got time for one more. That's you, Malia.
Hi, Trevor. Thanks so much. This is giving me so much to think about. So, a moment ago, when you chose to step out of integrity, share more about what is your system for when and where to step out of integrity.
So I just got goosebumps.
Great question.
Yeah, because I love this question. And I love that you said, what's your system? So this is my misunderstanding. I never want my word to limit me. So I love integrity. I love honoring my word, right? And that's the distinction, honoring versus keeping. I don't want to be like, that was my word, I must keep it. To me, the integrity comes from, the power comes from honoring it, which means keep it when you can. And that always works to keep it. And when not, find out the impact, clean up the mess. And so in that moment, I was like, oh, this story, this misunderstanding, this incident feels powerful for me. I'd love to share it. And then I was like, oh, I can't share it. I mean, you gave your word to your family never to share it again. And so someone put in the hashtag of like something and shit. I'm like, oh my God, please don't have this hashtag go viral.
I'm sure to tag you in it.
Yeah, or at least until I've cleaned it up with my family. And so that was just a good opportunity. And that was me revealing in the moment of like, okay, I can choose to go out of integrity, in this case, of service of something else. And I felt it in my nervous system of like, hold on, my word just constrained me. It was no longer empowering me and providing, right? And so I don't want my word to ever constrain me. I don't want to be at the effect of my own word. I am the creator of my word. And so then I can declare a breakdown, which is essentially what I did there. Like, oh, breakdown. I'm choosing to go out of integrity for the service of this, and I will clean it up with my fam. How's that for your misunderstanding?
I did find it interesting that you used the word breakdown. That it's a breakdown in integrity. It's a conscious, like unraveling in a sense, in the way that you see it. Like this is the system I've created, and this is, as I see it, a breakdown of that system of misunderstanding.
I mean, look at the hairs standing up. So I love this because you're helping me so much with my misunderstanding. I love breakdowns because every breakthrough comes from a breakdown. No breakdowns, no breakthroughs. So I'll just do that all the time with myself or my clients. Like, let's just declare a breakdown, and they have a semantic reaction like, oh, breakdowns are bad. No, beautiful. Now we can create a breakthrough, and I just created a breakthrough. So thank you. This is so helpful. It's like when I originally gave my word to my family, that was not a whole body yes for me, right? It was not a whole body yes. It was coming from fear and contraction. They were afraid I would look bad. And so I just placated them by saying, I will never say that again. So I was actually out of integrity in a larger sense, giving my word to my family in that moment, right? And so this has been very helpful. It's like, and I can feel it and sense it. It's like, okay, I'm going to go restore integrity with my family. And I'm not going to go and tell them, so that's the last time. I'm going to go create a new agreement with them of like, I will share this when it serves. And I won't, I was just going to say, I was about to say it. Let me check if this is empowering. I was going to say, I won't put it on social media. No, I'm not going to include that as a thing. I'm going to say, I will trust myself to share it when it serves and not do it to shock people or something else. Because even there, I still noticed my own nervous system, but that's what I got curious of, like, look at my semantic reaction to sharing this story. Like, what will people think? Trevor grabs his own shit, right? It's like so much gold in that. So thank you for slowing me down, right? It's like there's something there that I love my misunderstanding for integrity, and I know it's a mountain without a top, and I can keep getting a more empowering, workable one. And so you asking with something you may have noticed, right, is now helped me of like, oh yeah. What I always say to people is like, if you're out of integrity and it wasn't a conscious choice, it's usually because fear, or it was never a whole body yes for you to begin with, right? And so either you did it half-assed, or you killed yourself doing it, or you didn't do it, and it's like, go back, slow down. What's your system, which this has changed for me over the years, what's your system for when you give your word? Right? Do you really check in? And if I had checked in back then, I would have noticed that it wasn't a whole body yes for me to say to my family I'll never share that story because it kind of comes from fear and embarrassment and them wanting me to limit. And me, I was probably okay at the time because I was like, yeah, I really shouldn't share that story anymore. So let me give you my word. And now, and that's when I noticed, I'm like, oh my God, I'm at the effect of my word. Right? I'm not like, yeah, I don't want to. I was like, oh, this is something I said to try to take myself from being embarrassed. And I was like, oh yeah, that's all coming from fear. So that was beautiful for me. And I don't know if it's helped your misunderstanding, but thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Great stuff. Thanks, Trevor. This has been really extraordinary. Really extraordinary.
I got to deepen how empowered and workable my misunderstanding of misunderstanding is. So thank you to all of you. That's why I love these spaces, because until I share and find and hear and get to play with, even yesterday I was playing with ChatGPT. That was fun.
Yeah. Well, you get to
Always
test
fun.
it and see how workable it is. And you only get to do it out there in the real world, not here in the real world. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you all for being part of this. And get back to misunderstanding everything that's going on.
Have fun.
Thank you.
Much
Bye.
love, everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Love you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Brilliant.